For what?
Yeah.
For what? Why am I doing all this shit if I can't actually be present in the moments that I actually am doing this for?
Right. Disguising your ability to be happy in productivity is like the root of every entrepreneur's problem. When you are unable to be not achieving at any current moment, where the second you stop with that pursuit, you feel guilty, or you're not present with the things that your success has given you.
A lot of the struggles that you face could be disguised as significant momentum. You initially committed to something, let's say business. You're initially like, oh, that's great, we're gonna make millions of dollars. Right. And now that that type of abundance has come, you're like, maybe I should have been more careful about what I wish for. Such a fucked up world.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Okay, cool. You want to pray?
Yes.
Let's do it. Father, thank you for the opportunity to create something bigger than myself today. Thank you for the gift of conversation, of connecting, of impact. I surrender every word, every thought, and every moment of this episode to you. Let this not be about impressing anyone, but about inspiring and serving those you've called us to reach. Give me peace, give me clarity and courage. Help me listen deeply, speak authentically, and lead with love and truth. Multiply this conversation far beyond what I can see right now. Bless our guests, bless our listeners, bless this mission. May today mark a true momentum shift, not for others, but for us too. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Nice. I think it's important to start that off with prayer. And we don't always have to include every prayer that we do offline in any episode or anything, but I mean, if we're doing this for the glorification of God anyway.
Yeah.
One of the major things that I was thinking about today when I was prepping a lot was like, I don't ever want this to be perceived as me or us coming off as like we know how to handle all of these situations, what a strong relationship with God looks like, because as pretty as things look on the outside, I think not enough people are sharing like the hell you go through and the wrestle that you have with God. At least from my perspective, it is like, you know, I'm in probably the best season of my life when it comes to my relationship with God, and it is still hell. Mm-hmm. It's a wrestle for sure.
I tend to notice a lot of the stuff online looks performative.
Sure.
In a way that, you know, makes me someone who's, you know, decently new to back to my faith, grew up in the church, but you know, back to it for the first time in a while, intimidates me a little bit, you know, it makes me feel like I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's like this like toxic form of Christianity that's coming back right now. I talk about it with a lot of people. It's like, Christianity is making like this major popular surge per se in the entrepreneurship community, especially with like young people. And it's amazing, but a lot of it's like false. A lot of it's fraudulent. A lot of it's like selective. It's like, oh yeah, let's go be these outwardly facing Christians in this lens, but let me then also not have integrity in my business. Or it's only selective when it makes sense. And this happens with all different types of religions. It's nothing new.
Yeah.
But I think we're seeing it a lot on social media. And I think one of the lens that I want us to come off of on this show is like, I want the people to learn from me learning, from me having curiosity, from us bringing on people that have walked with faith for years and have somewhat figured this thing out and how to navigate it, but also humble themselves to realize that they still have a long way to go too.
Totally.
It's kind of like what, especially a lot of these solo episodes, what I want them to be around is just like what the current state of my life, like what are my current thoughts. I want to do these on a weekly basis or so where as I'm journaling, as I'm writing, things are coming up, I'm at least sharing them on this type of platform long form, because if I don't, people can perceive my life on the outside to be pretty solid. Of course. You know, and I'm like, I have a blessed life. Like it's amazing. Life is so abundant and I'm experiencing the momentum of everything that I've put in, at least career wise, very significantly in healthy amounts of abundance. But I don't think I share or enough people share the shit that comes with it. Yeah. Like I'm in the season of like the most amount of momentum where everything is going right and everything is crashing at the same time. It feels that way, at least internally. Does that make sense?
More money, more problems. Yeah. I mean, I think as you go through different phases, even though things can look good on the outside, a lot of the time that's usually backed by a lot of overwhelm.
Sure.
A lot of stuff that people don't want to show because, you know, why would you document it? You know what I mean? It's not necessarily that, at least from my perspective, that you're afraid to share, like, you know, your pitfalls or your downsides or whatever. It's like when you're in the depths of struggling, the last thing like you think about is to like document it. You know what I mean? Because you're so in your own head, like dealing with stuff. At least that's how I've experienced too. But like when you do experience things that are high and that you're feeling great, you have more like brain space to like open up, if that makes sense. But in those moments when you are struggling, it's like the last thing that you think about. Like, you know, you might be able to share that if you would feel comfortable sharing it, but you don't end up opening up because it's just not you're in your own bubble immediately, you know?
And the funny thing is that like typically the best thing you could do in that moment is share it. Like that's like one of the best releases that you have, especially now that I've decided to consciously bring God into everything, where it's like, and I miss the mark a lot with it, but
of course, we all do.
Every time I can create awareness when I'm going through some shit where I can just sit down and pray with God of like, God, what do you need me to sacrifice here? Like, what are you trying to tell me? There's an overwhelming sense of peace that comes along with it. It doesn't immediately rectify or change the situation, but it's objectively better than not doing it, in my opinion, right? What I'm experiencing right now is, for a long time, especially when I got out of college and got into the world of like sales and entrepreneurship, I just made every bit of commitment because I'm sure I'll share this maybe on this podcast or another time. Like my career ended very abruptly and I was a really good baseball player and everything kind of came crashing down at the end of that. And I promised myself that I would never fall back on my commitments ever again. And a large part of that served me, right? It built up a lot of self-confidence because self-confidence is just keeping your word all the time.
Yeah.
But when you yes yourself to death, you end up overcommitting to a lot of things. And when all of those things start to create momentum at one time, you are significantly overwhelmed. Yeah. So it's like today, I spent 2 hours this morning subtracting things from my life. I didn't focus on one single thing to add. All I did was focus on like what things are not serving me in this exact moment. Sometimes, like sadly, that's people. What relationships are not serving me? What actions and habits are not serving me? Something that I try and do at least once a month is like a time audit and task audit around like what are things that are truly not serving me in this season of my life. And you get that form of addition through subtraction. I need to subtract a lot.
Yeah.
Subtraction is the name of the game for me in this season right now, for sure.
Yeah, I think when you have too much going on, you're, you know, not able to put enough of your focus on anything. So then you lose that traction from the individual endeavors that you maybe want to be spending more time on because you're focused on things that are not contributing to your quality of life. What would you say is like your biggest sense or source of overwhelm right now?
Yeah, I think that a lot of it's disguised as business momentum, right? Like a lot of the struggles that you face could be disguised as significant momentum where you initially committed to something, i.e., let's say business, and you're initially like, oh, that's great. We're going to make millions of dollars. Right. And now that that type of abundance has come, you're like, maybe I should have been more careful about what I wish for, right? Because at what cost?
Right.
And that doesn't mean that like, I don't want to continue building our businesses. Like we're building a very significant portfolio of companies right now, and I'm having a blast doing it. But when you don't create the right amounts of leverage and you're just like trying to hard work your way through it, at what cost in your life, right? So like the people that know me, a lot of them have been asking like, are you okay, dude? Because like the way that I downregulate has just significantly just been like depression. It's like this hyper performer in the business world and like networking and relationships and like everyone sees that side of it. But then it's like doom scrolling, porn addiction, all these horrible things that come along with it. Netflix, nothing inherently wrong with one specific thing.
Of course.
But all those things start to negatively compound where I'd love to have this level of like equilibrium and ultimately that's like joy in my life. That's me being happy with myself. So if I had to answer a question of like, am I proud of myself? Yes. Am I happy? That's a more complex thing for sure.
How easy is that to achieve through entrepreneurship though? Because as you talk to entrepreneurs, like that is, you know, really a common way to feel, where you're in love with the pursuit and the chase of trying to get better, but at what cost to your own mental well-being, to your personal habits, to your ability to regulate your emotions. So, where is that line? Like, what does that actually look like in practice?
Sure. Yeah, great question. And also, thank you for being here. For those that know, like you'll probably see Ella on a lot of podcasts as well, but Ella's the one that makes the world go round alongside Bobby behind the scenes. So thank you. I just can't do solo episodes just talking to myself. I need those types of questions to spark.
Of course.
So what does that look like tactically? It's a really good question. I think every single entrepreneur that is building something worth building, that you care about, that you're depositing value into the marketplace for, that is going to change other people's lives, I would almost say you need to go through some level of pain loop, right? So I don't think it's about avoiding it. I think it's about, if you can learn something from this podcast or any possible experience that I have, it was like creating better forms of healthy coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
Like learning to be okay with it and stop fighting it at times. So I think every single person, specifically men, a lot of men go through this. Everyone has their proverbial hand on the stove. You can listen to so many people, read so many books about all these do's and don'ts, and we'll still test our pain tolerance to it, because that's just how we're wired.
Yeah.
Of like, let me just see what I can get away with in this moment.
Yeah.
And I see Bobby shaking his head behind there. Yep. It's common. It's common.
Yeah.
And I think where I've went wrong for so long is going through it and like you create this form of self-confidence and mental toughness that allows you to deal with a lot of shit and continue to persevere through it. But that mental toughness also is a very fine line between like the toughness and disassociation. So like being disassociated, mentally tough, and I'm no clinical psychologist, so like I'll probably stay on the very surface level of this stuff. But being disassociated and being mentally tough, there's like this very small fine line, because what you think may be mentally tough does not serve you
Avoidance.
is avoidance of the actual emotion.
Yeah.
And like what I've learned through working through this a lot is that if you don't deal with it, specifically trauma, it gets stored in your body somewhere. And that shows up as like physical pain, anguish, emotional pain, sadness, depression, at least in my world.
Yeah.
And that hasn't served me well in my relationships, in my walk with faith, in my health.
Yeah.
So those are things that I want to unpack for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know we talked a little bit about this recently, you storing pain in your body and this trauma and working through that. Do you think that's one of those things that is a requirement to move on and kind of cleanse your body of all the things that you've kind of like, all the times you've hit the nail into your body over and over and over again? Mm-hmm. Are those things, is it a requirement or something that you feel like you need to kind of get rid of before you can move on? Or is this something that you're working through in real time? Like, how is this showing up for you, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a more complex question that I don't feel comfortable answering definitively, right? But I'll answer it from my perspective.
It's hard to know.
And this is probably a question that we'd ask someone that's a lot more qualified next time we have said person on the show, right? But for me, I think it's a requirement for me, because I've hit that nail so much. And I heard a quote that one of my business partners told me that really stuck, was like, the trauma that your parents don't deal with gets passed down to you. So it's like generations. So like there's things that my great grandfather may not have ever dealt with that's now coming through to me. That's epigenetics.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't know anything further than that. I'm not going to claim to know anything further than that, but I know that it's science and that it's a fact. Mm-hmm. So with that, also like on the other side of that, the prayers that your grandfather made and all those blessings could be putting onto you now as well. So all that energy is transcends time, right? So with that, for me, it's been a lot more mandatory than not, especially knowing that I want to be a family man, that I want to have children one day. I don't want to factually hand down this trauma to my kids as well and have them go through some of the battles that I've gone through. Mm-hmm. And so with that, like, I'm doing everything I can right now to at least like create momentum in the other direction, because for me, there's no point of stagnation. It's rather you're creating momentum in one direction, which is a positive direction, or it's negatively compounding, because doing nothing automatically negatively compounds.
Of course.
And sadly, that negative momentum compounds a lot faster than positive momentum. Think about it. How much harder is it to climb up a mountain than it is to just instantly fall off of it?
Yeah.
Right. So we could go into this if you like. Like I've actually just recently come off a pretty intense experience that tangibly starts to create a lot of awareness around this and then starts to heal for sure.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So a very good friend of mine that I trust deeply introduced me to this lady, and I'll, for confidentiality purposes, I won't share her name, but she is a master at psychedelic somatic therapy.
Psychedelic somatic therapy.
Psychedelic somatic therapy.
Okay.
So look that up, or Bobby, if when you're editing this, post a definition, because I won't be able to define it. But excuse me, the way that I can define my experience, at least, is I spent 5 days in Utah. This is we're recording this in late April. It was probably like 3 weeks ago at this point. 5 days in Utah, and one of the longer days, you're blindfolded for 6 to 8 hours, laying on a bed. It sounds much worse than it really is. It sounds like more trippy than it is. You're not like tripping balls or anything.
Yeah.
And I was on MDMA. I took MDMA the first time in my life, and I'm very open about it. I don't want it to be construed as somebody just go do it.
Of course.
Consult people before you do this stuff. But what the MDMA allowed me to do was like tap a lot more into your body, because all the trauma is stored in your body. So it's less important to rationalize why the trauma exists and more important to feel it. Because for so long, and I think our brains are always trying to rationalize, like, why is this happening?
Totally.
And a lot of times when you try and wrap your mind around such a complex topic, you get so frustrated, anger, depression, all that stuff, because you can't figure it out. Because it's too complex. It's not. Right. It's a different level of energy that's like not really figure outable.
I feel like most people don't have like the capacity to sit there and even try and find the source.
Yep.
Because that's something that's so deep rooted. It takes a lot of either therapy, self-reflection, and especially as guys or entrepreneurs or both, that's not something that people sit down to do. I mean, even myself, I don't tend to do those things, but if we're going, related to your experience, like that's not something that people take the time to sit down and find the source of what is causing them issues in their day that it's showing up in little ways here and there in the way they interact with people or the way they feel going to bed at night or after work on their day.
Well, it's a practice, right? It's you have to actually practice self-awareness. Yeah. I was blessed with some level of like deep self-awareness, but it's something that you always have to practice on because it's rooted in getting away from your ego. Because your ego is just trying to keep you safe the whole time. And it's like, oh, I'm the best at this, or I don't need that, and things like that. I've just tried to be radically open. And part of that's just accepting your faults.
Right.
And not being resentful of those faults at all. So what I've come to find is that I've always tried to stop create a practice around making the emotion no longer come up. And that is inherently just foolish. It's just dumb. It's a stupid practice because you're never going to get away from making emotions come up. It's more about creating a level of acceptance and how you deal with them. Right. So this practice where you're sitting, being so in tune with your body, you can feel things come up in your body and you can associate emotions to them. And part of it was, there were some parts that was like very obvious and other parts were like deeply entrenched in there. And you're just doing your best to figure out where it's going. And then if you create a lot of intention around it, your body starts to discharge it. And if someone told me about this even a year ago, I'd be like, if I'm listening to this on a podcast, they'd be like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, enough of that shit. Like, I would be like, all right, so like tactically, how does that make me more money? Understood. Or how do I get to the other side of that so quickly? It's just, it's more of an infinite game, which is so much harder to play, especially for someone like me. So that type of practice where it left me with a lot of confusion, but excitement because it doesn't change in one thing, right? So we're going through it. We get all these layers off, but that's just one very top layer. So one of the things I realized is like how much fucking trauma I've had stored in my body and how much future trauma is going to come. Because you always have to, this is an evolving practice. It's not something you just get over. It's like, okay, cool. This is going to help get all this past stuff away. But then what about all the shit that comes up in my life in the future? These are practices that you got to create. It doesn't always have to be around putting a blindfold on for 6 hours.
Right.
But it's like, how do I deal with situations that come up in my life where typically I would feel rather disassociated, not feeling the emotion, or running away with some level of coping mechanism?
Yeah.
How do I just sit there and let it be?
Yeah. It's interesting. And I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit more about, like, I guess, like, this sense of what the word trauma means. Because, like, trauma has been so desensitized in our society where people don't feel like they've been, like, affected by enough things to, like, have to go through some sort of cleansing or therapy, honestly, right? Like, I could speak for myself. I've had a great life. I got to go to college, right? You can go on and on, right? Mm-hmm. And it's obviously incomparable. You know, everyone's story is different. But, like, in terms of what that actually means, trauma, you know, you don't have to have, like, your parent be shot in front of you or have some sort of, like, you know, stereotypical traumatic experience to, and of course those things do show up for people, but, like, what does that mean to you? You know what I mean?
Sure.
I guess it's kind of like a heavy question, but
it is. And I always want to reiterate that I'm probably not the most qualified person to talk about this stuff. Right? I haven't done thousands of hours of deep study on trauma. I think Taylor Welch will be a great person to go through this with. I love you, Taylor, by the way. For me, I've always felt a level of shame because I would still feel shitty about my life at times while never having gone through anything crazy.
That's sort of what I mean.
Yeah. It's like, oh, we're coming from this, like, such, like, crazy privileged platform.
Yeah.
I grew up super upper middle class. Like, my parents loved me to death. Now, some of that was very tough love. A lot of it was like, as much as I love my dad, it was some serious tough love for sure, both physical and emotional. And also with baseball, there's physical trauma that shows up, right? Like, I was a catcher in baseball. Like, you're getting crushed all the time. And then baseball ending, that's like trauma that is stored in your body. And like when baseball ended for me, I turned immediately to like drugs and bad relationships and things like that. And like, that's a inherently terrible coping mechanism to deal with trauma. So I kept teaching my body that every time I would feel these emotions, this is what I would do. And that's such a negative compounding for so long that it gets rooted into habits.
Totally.
And you can reverse that because like I've reversed that in so many other ways in my life. But it's an ongoing evolution for me. So I think trauma ultimately is just like some relative form of impact. And we've desensitized the word trauma too much.
Yeah.
And also like to the other side of the coin, there's still a level of like mental toughness that you have to keep, especially in business where it's like, all right, you don't always have to be so fluffy and just dealing with all these emotions at every single given moment in your life. There's a time to just lock the fuck in and get to work too. So
So when it comes to your trip to Utah, how have you felt different from before that experience, after, both physically, and then like what have you learned about yourself from that experience?
It's actually been tougher. Because once you're introduced to...
You open the can of worms.
Yeah, once you're introduced to it, something we talked about with Dylan Rich on that podcast, where it's like, once you make a decision, not just a choice, you sever any other opportunity to go back.
Yeah.
And so now that I've been introduced to this world, I know how much more work there is to be done, and I know the cost of not addressing the work. So now, especially with so many things on my plate right now, it's like, how do I make space for that?
Totally.
Where it showed up in a positive way is a pretty funny story. This guy, a couple weeks ago, like I used to, while I was away and while Landon was away, I would see on my video camera, he was stealing our packages. Right. And I was like, how do I go about not stopping this besides not ordering packages? So I could see him there stealing our shit. Then I started working with this holistic doctor. And part of that is like doing blood work and stool samples. So I did blood work, and a stool sample. And if you're like, as crazy as it sounds, a stool sample is you're shitting in a cup and sending it out to, like, I don't know how else to make that sound pretty,
like most
right?
people probably know what it is.
Yeah, so you're sending that out to the office. And part of that, like you do that at home and you send it out to the office. So I put it out in a FedEx thing for FedEx to come pick up. And the next day, the dude steals my fucking FedEx package with the shit in there.
He literally stole your shit.
Yeah, he literally, So yesterday we were talking with Bobby. He stole my whoop the day before, and then he stole my poop the next day. So, I mean, it was very laughable. I was like, part of that stuff doesn't even, like, frustration doesn't even creep in because you've created such a level of practice, like, oh, that stuff doesn't matter. But next couple days, I see this guy in the parking lot of this studio, actually. And I know it's him. Like, I know it's the same guy on his bike. I could tell he's a homeless dude.
Yeah.
He was begging for money at the time, and he asked me for money. And in that moment, I had a couple choices where it was like, typically I don't pause during these moments. I typically just like answer things or respond very quickly. And I've been really working on like those small pauses in between moments, because that's where like thoughts can be processed and actions can be different. And long term, like the trajectory of your life can change in those moments too. But in that moment, I had a couple choices of like, do I like lash out at this guy, get angry at him, tell him that he shouldn't be stealing my packages or go crazy? Or do I just like take a different approach, one that I typically have never taken in my life? I decided to go the other way, where it was more about me getting over it myself than me having to like forgive him. And so I just told him that God loves him, man. And I gave him money. I gave him $20. And as foolish as some other people would probably think that is, like I felt so at peace with that decision.
Right.
I think God puts those like funny, novel situations in your life to see how you'll respond to them.
I was just going to say that. I think that was probably a test, especially after your experience a couple of weeks ago and what you've been internally dealing with and how you've been responding to situations. It's just like a perfect example of God showing up in a way that is testing you on how you're going to respond as a result of working through some of the things that you've been holding on to for so long. I think that's beautiful, honestly. Yeah. It really, really is.
Thank you. It brings me back to a couple things that I've read that I've actually done deeper study on. I've been doing my best to, whenever I read the Bible, whenever I read the Bible, I'm always trying to like go deeper into research, whether it's using AI or writing about it, because how many times have you read the Bible and you're just like, what the fuck did I just read?
I know.
Like, what is that? Half the words don't make sense. Yeah. Half the time I'm just doing it to check the box off and I'm not actually like moving my life forward. Totally. It's almost just as bad as not opening up at the end of the day, because you're not bringing intention to
100%.
it. So at times I'm trying to sit down and take time to like study about it, write about it. A lot of times I'll post about it. So this one actually is very prevalent into this time in my life, where if you go to Daniel chapter 3, it's about the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And essentially there's a new king in town, and they're pretty much saying everyone has to bow down to this king and these false idols, or they'll die and they'll get put in a furnace. And so most people that were faithful to God at the time would bow down to this new king so that they didn't have to die. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego all got into that furnace, immediately stepped into that furnace, and we're willing to die for this cause because we don't believe in your God. We believe in the one and true God. And immediately a fourth figure appeared, which people interpret to be as God, in that furnace, and they walked out completely unscathed in that furnace. And how many times in my life has God called me or tested me to walk into that fire, and I've simply just avoided it? And it's like 99.9% of the time, it doesn't show up as a life or death scenario, right? It's not like I'm going to die or he's going to condemn or strike lightning on me when that happens. But even in the littlest of moments, I've just created so much level of avoiding it or running away from it. But he wants to let us in. And so part of how I've been able to deal with this big season of my life right now, where, we're going through serious business momentum, where I'm working 16 hours a day, taking meetings, and it's draining me. And also, like, we're working on a business partnership buyout, which is like a lot of time, a lot of money, to the tunes of like 7+ figures going into this deal, legal, all this type of stuff. Things that I've prayed for to happen, but like, be wise about what you pray for, because things are going to happen for sure. A lot of times I've just avoided bringing God into the situation. And now I'm going, hey, God, like, how can I bring you in here? How can I bring you into this situation to help lead me through it? Because that's all he's asking for.
Right.
He just wants us to like be brought into the storm, not be away from the storm. It's not about making the storm stop. It's about bringing God into the storm with you. And when you start to practice that enough, because it sounds woo-woo, and it, like, the first time you do it, nothing tangible is going to happen.
Of course.
It's like, don't take me as the end-all, be-all at this, because I fail significantly more times than not at this shit, right? But what I've come to find is that the second that I start to believe that in my heart and I start to feel it, there's an overwhelming sense of peace. And I realize like everything that I need is right here.
Yeah.
And none of this shit actually really matters.
There's a perspective change that comes when you decide to hand over your anxiety to something that is greater than yourself. And that's the biggest thing that when I went back to my faith, I noticed significantly change. It's not like things really change on a day-to-day, going on around you, but it's the way that you look at the situation when you decide to bring God in, because then you're able to look beyond what you typically look. You look 20 feet usually, now you're seeing 100 miles because you're seeing so far beyond anything that's you can control in your own ecosystem. And you can then say to yourself, I can do the work during the day. And then when I'm asleep and when I'm resting, God will continue to do this work for me. And I think that is the most peaceful thing that you can possibly have, especially as a business owner, where you feel like you're constantly working, you're constantly running your own, pouring your own water out, right? Yep. But when you allow God to come and work with you, you don't feel like this rigid force that you're working against, time, energy, hours in the day, whatever it might be. Now you feel like it's all moving towards the same destination because you're working with the powers that be that you can't control.
Sure. That's so good. Whew. Nice. Well said. That's awesome. Wow. Let me sit with that for a second. This is something that I tell a lot of my clients, because now, I want to make sure that we're always being applicable to, also a lot of entrepreneurs that are listening to this as well. Where I see it show up in the world of business is a lot of people are just looking at everything on a day-to-day or week-to-week, month-to-month basis. Everyone's like, oh, especially my young clients. The young guys are so funny because they're making so much money. So we work with, the lowest barometer that you can be doing is millions of dollars a year to work with us in the consulting side of things. Mm-hmm. So all these young guys, 21, 22 years old, they're making hundreds of thousands a month. But if they go from 100,000 a month to 80,000 a month the next month, the world is burning and that everything's going crazy. And I'm like, hey, we need to extend the time horizons on how we analyze data, because if you look at things on a macro chart, or if you look at your life on a macro chart, things are just fine. Yeah. Because would you ever expect the chart to just go up in a fully straight line? But if you've looked at all of your experience throughout the last 5 to 10 years, this is just a very small dip in the stock market chart compared to where you're headed, right? And so I've always done an exercise where I'm zooming out 100 years. I'm making 100-year goals, because you can't have anxiety when you're looking that far out, because things that you could do today can't change anything for 100 years from now, right? Yeah. Because when you're trying to be remembered for 100 years from now are feelings or deeply embedded words that you're saying or movements that you've created, not just hey, we did $1 million this month or things like that. So that's created a very overwhelming sense of peace where it's let's extend these levels of time horizons, because we're not playing in a finite game, especially if you're a faithful human. There's life after this too. So
yeah, I think it's interesting because I think there's a definite balance that needs to happen between perspective on a long-term scale of when things are going shitty, I'm going to be okay, and having that conversation with yourself, as well as being able to zoom in to those daily habits and be how am I going to lead with action, moving the needle today, and also moving, with faith, if that's something that you incorporate, yourself and myself as well. There's a difficult balance there, I think, sometimes, where you're tactically, what is going to be the best actions, the best decisions that I can make today in order to, make progress for tomorrow, move one more step forward, make 1% better. But then also when things aren't going so well, and even though you're taking steps forward and you're banging your head against the wall, why isn't this working? Being able to then look at faith from a different lens and have trust in the process, whether it's going good or bad, but sometimes you can use it in different ways of there's never going to be this line that goes either all the way up or all the way down. And so just learning how to manage your emotions around those things can be challenging and necessary. And so I want to ask you, how do you sort of play with that? Because you're a very action step successful person. You have a rigid schedule, you get up every day, you do the work, and no one's perfect here. But you also have this ability to take this zoom out and like look at these other, clients of yours even and say like, listen, we've got to take it. Oh, you got to take a step back here. The world's not on fire. How do you manage that 100-mile view out versus that day-to-day? I got to like be on my ass to know I got to get what's done today.
Sure. I just have land in my life. That's pretty much the only solution. No, so for me, the reason why I'm so hell-bent and focused on the zoom out version is probably because I should be taking a lot more of my own advice that I give to clients, because I've created a set of habits, rituals, techniques, and things that I've always been sharing. This is probably what I'm like notorious for. If anyone's ever followed me on social media and stuff, is like consistency wins. It's tattooed on my forearm. That's our brand. That's everything. So it's always been like, how do I reverse engineer this large, daunting goal to a set of micro habits today?
Yeah.
When you do that enough, which like I've been rigorous on hitting my non-negotiables for a very long time, that's kind of like been on autopilot for me. So it sounds like it sounds egotistical or pompous, but I haven't even had to worry about the action taking, because my actual problem today is like taking too much action. I'm so decisive and so action focused, especially with things that I know that like the negative repercussions are not bad. I don't even care. Like in an instant of a second, I'm like, all right, cool. Like I'll fly out there. Let's make that decision. Where Landon's amazing is that he thinks through things a lot more tactically on the larger decisions for us, which is why we appointed him the CEO, where it's like, hey, let me go make all the decisions that like aren't going to have massive negative repercussions. And then you think through like the massive ones. So with that, that's been kind of where I've had to manage this dichotomy, because a lot of people, especially ones that I'm looking to connect with at a higher level, people that are far beyond me in business, mentors and things, they respect me because immediately the second they tell me to read a book or hop on a flight somewhere, I don't even ask questions. I just get it done. There's a lot of power to that.
That's interesting.
It's huge and served me so well in my life. But if I could go back 5 years, I would. And the reason why I use like 5 or 6 years is because that's when I really started this personal development journey. Right. I would tell myself that you need to create a practice around zooming out as well, because you will be wildly, wildly successful in the terms that you create around success with where you're consistent. So you'll be like, if you want to be super consistent with getting financial success, there is a science behind it where you literally can't fuck it up. It's like if I reverse engineer enough things that I know work and just do those things, and I think about it on a long enough time horizon, I'll win. It's impossible to lose. But at what cost? If I don't leave energy for my relationships, if I don't leave energy for my health, I'll certainly be successful there. But my definition of success was so fucking skewed that I was like, it leaves me with this like empty void in multiple areas. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think that's not out of the common, way that people see success right now, especially on social media. And this idea or concept of entrepreneurship has been like very skewed in the lens of the public eye, right? As we were talking about yesterday with Dylan, the money and how you can deal with that, the evil that is, people perceive, making money to be around, people using it as something to reject against, right? But I want to kind of bring your thoughts to like, if you're, speaking to the audience here about like, how to kind of arrive at this high performing lifestyle that you have built for yourself. Obviously we can all take our own advice better, but can you kind of go a little bit more tactical on that? Like, speak to you at 22 years old, 21 years old, someone who's maybe lacking the purpose that you found in your life, where they can maybe start in terms of, even the way you're speaking is like, if someone's kind of lacking purpose here, and they're listening to something like this, they want to be a high achiever, they're probably like, where do I even go? Yeah.
I think starting on the micro is really what's going to keep it sustainable.
Yeah.
So that's where I came up with consistency wins.
Yeah.
I dialed it down to this this system. I talk about this system a lot. It's called Build. And you got to go get wins. So anytime people call me, good friends of mine, like very high performers, they'll call me and be like, dude, I'm in a rut. Like, I don't know where to go from here. We got to get you an immediate win real quick, because your level of joy is dependent upon your level of self-confidence. And self-confidence only comes from keeping your word consistent enough to where your brain starts to believe, like your subconscious starts to believe that you are that person.
Totally.
So identity shift comes with action. So how do we get to the action real quick and go get you wins? But most people try and get too big of wins too quickly, which is where you burn out.
Totally.
I've done that before many a times. But if you can focus on the micro, where it's like, hey, if I want to go get jacked and I'm like really out of shape, you probably shouldn't make a commitment to like go work out rigorously and run marathons within the next 7 days.
Yeah.
I would just focus on going for a walk around the block. Like, how do you just show up and create that habit of actually showing up? Because that level of self-confidence is what keeps you sustainable. Because like, it's very easy to be a flash in the pan, very hard to be around for long. With that, Build is a system that I've created that allowed you to pretty much take the emotion out of it. But now I need to recreate it, because I don't want the emotions to be taken out of it, because the way I've been able to do it is like, I can do these things so well, but I also haven't, like, through that, I didn't deal with the emotion.
That's interesting.
It's really easy to do it while like, the way that I wanted to create it was like making sure that you get your stuff done, even if you don't feel good about it, even if you're like sad or happy, which is still important. But I'll figure out a way and then articulate it on the podcast whenever I study that. But Build. B stands for body. What can I do for my body today? These are things that I would write down like the night before I wake up or the morning of. It's like, all right, cool. How am I going to get my build done? And now at this point, like this is ingrained into my head, so I don't even, or my calendar, so I don't even have to write it down.
Right.
But what am I doing for my body that day? Your body is your temple. If you don't have energy, you literally can't focus on anything else. And if you're a fat, lazy person, it's very tough to be in a good mindset. So B stands for body. U stands for you. What is it that I actually wanted to do today? Like, where do I want to create all of this stuff that I'm going through around my life, not vice versa? I want to build my business around my life, not my life around my business. And a lot of people early on, they build their life around their business because they have nowhere else to go. They literally have no sales appointments, no money, all that type of stuff. So I get it. I get the sacrifice, but still plan in the time for you to have personal time. You know, date your wife, go out go out to dinner, do things like that. Go to the movies, go watch that Netflix thing you wanted, or go play video games. Like, those things are important to make sure that you're not burning out. I is income. What am I doing to move my income forward? Am I setting appointments? Am I having sales calls? Am I training my team? Whatever that looks like in your worlds, to make sure that your income's moving forward. L is love or relationships. How am I continuing to build deeper with the relationships with my family, with God, with my network? That's something I take very, very seriously. I pretty much have like a CRM around how I deposit relationships. I see relationships as bank accounts, and I don't even care about ever withdrawing from those bank accounts. I just want to keep depositing into my bank accounts as much as possible. The beautiful thing about it is that like, you don't really ever have to withdraw. People just give.
Yeah.
They reciprocate. And then D's development, personal development. What are my inputs? It is so easy to negatively compound momentum by just listening to the outside world, watching the news. Right now, a big thing's like listening to modern music nowadays. The frequency of modern music is fucking crazy.
And demonic.
It is so easy to let stuff negatively compound. So even just to maintain homeostasis, you have to like radically personally develop in the other way. So that's why I'm always auditing my inputs in my life around that. So if you can get build done, that pretty much addresses all the major pillars in your life. You literally can't help but move forward in your life.
That's so cool.
So
I love that.
Yeah, that's my system. That's what
great.
I've created. Something that I've been really adamant on as well is throughout that, and these are things that if you're around me long enough, you'll hear. Bobby gets this a lot too around me, is making sure that we're auditing negative self-talk. Because like even self-deprecation, which is like something I do a lot with like being humorous, is your brain doesn't know anything other than to
Words.
Accept everything as truth, right? So this is something that people around me, I ruffle a lot of feathers because like I don't tolerate any of that shit inside my circle, because the second somebody else says it, my brain's also listening to it as well. So it's like being radical about the people that you surround yourself, the inputs around there. And the quicker that you can realize your negative self-talk and have what Jason Selk, who's a very high performance coach who we work with, he works with all these like top NFL players, NCAA guys, all these types of things. And he talks about RSF, which is relentless solution focus. So the quicker that you can realize that you're having negative self-talk or a bad emotions popping in, it's not about trying to figure out a way to stop it, to completely eliminate the emotion. It's all about how do I immediately turn that to a solution focus. If I learned that in baseball, I would still be playing. I'd be a Major League Baseball player right now. It's just how do you take the time from feeling like shit to finding a solution? The quicker that you can condense that time, the more successful you'll be in your life.
Yeah.
That's been a huge practice that you have to consciously practice it until it becomes subconscious 100%. At some point.
It's something that's wired into your brain. I think there's a difference between letting yourself feel your emotions and then move past those emotions, and then letting your emotions take over simply by the way that you're talking to yourself through the way that you're feeling. Mm-hmm. And the better that you can get at just regulating the way that you speak to yourself, the better that you can get at being more positive about what you can do about the situation. Because I've been in situations before, gone through depression and grew up with an eating disorder, that's all I consumed was negative self-image, negative self-talk, and consumption meaning what I was listening to, what I was surrounding myself with, like what I was saying to myself, what other people were saying about themselves that I was around, like everything that you are consuming through your ears, your eyes, your mouth, that too, yep. Was destructive to the way that I saw myself. And the only way to get me to stop that thought pattern was legitimately to start speaking out loud to myself about positive things about the way that I saw myself. That was the only way I could get myself to stop, because I'm like, I need myself to hear it before I can, stop these thought patterns that like run subconsciously as you're like having a conversation or you're in class or you're doing something, but it's like not your forefront thought. It's just running in the background like a film reel, like just the negative things. And I notice, at least with my, with the people around me, the ones that are down, like you notice that that's like a common theme.
It feels good to talk about our problems.
Yeah,
right? Like this is something I'm trying to be very aware of on this podcast as well, where it's like, I don't want it to come off as complaining or even venting. Like venting feels really good, but venting is radically unproductive.
It's so true.
Because you're like, what you focus on expands, right? Like, can we agree to that? Like,
totally.
We all talk about like, if you focus on one thing, it's going to expand and it's become your reality. That's quantum physics in a nutshell. And so if I continue to focus on the problem is only going to perpetuate, if not get bigger.
Right.
So that's why I'm so radical about who I keep around me in my life. Because the second negativity creeps in, it's like, dude, I can't do that. Because I love it. My body craves it. My ego loves it because it keeps me safe. So it's a really good point that you bring up, because it costs nothing to be more positive about it. And like, I'm not about the radical positivity, like the fluffy shit, like, oh, like everything's fine and it's all rainbows and butterflies. But it costs nothing to be pretty intense about drilling positive thoughts into your head. It costs everything to not. That's something that I'm always pretty adamant about, is like, I might not experience any great momentum from doing this, but I know for a fact that negative momentum continues to compound.
It'll pull you back no matter what.
Keep doing what I'm doing.
100%. I think there's some sort of catharsis in letting yourself feel what you're feeling, but I think the way that you express those things, meaning like the physical words that you say, sometimes you can't necessarily help it. If some situation makes you really upset, like think about those times where you're like at your breaking point, like something really like set you off. Sometimes you can't necessarily control the way that you respond, maybe in private, hopefully not in public, but everyone deals with things differently. It's important to understand like how these things are actually lingering into the next thing that you decide to do. That,
and plus, I think it's important to have a level of discernment about who you share it with.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because Where I think a lot of people go wrong, which I fall victim to this all the time, is sharing your problems with people that can't solve them.
Totally.
It's so bad because all
so
people would do is just continue to acknowledge it and let you know that it's okay.
Oh, that sucks. That sucks. Yep. You're right. It does suck, right?
Yep. That's why, I mean,
just agreeing that the situation's bad. There's nothing anyone can do about it.
That's why we have so many coaches and mentors, and it's just so important to get different perspectives from people in different pillars of your life that have been through this shit. So that's really what continues to at least externally motivate me, because my life was changed radically by a lot of people that have been able to give me these feedback. And I respect people that I can tell they've been through shit and come out on the other side of it. For example, this is why I'm not huge in the Catholic side of things. I grew up Catholic, like we just talked about. It's the Catholic side is arguably one of the, like, at least from my experience, like the religion side of Christianity is arguably the most repulsive thing for Christianity. It's arguably the worst thing to bring people to the world of true Christianity.
We can dive into that another time.
Yeah, that being said, that's why I never really respected the priests. Nice people, most of them, right? Like really good humans, but they never really been through shit. I'd rather someone that's like had to gone through that, had like, you know, not saying that this is the number one barometer that they need to be, but like they've cheated on their wife or went through like a massive battle with depression or done some shit and came on the other end of it through God's grace. That's a broken person that's come out on the other side of things, that's willing to be vulnerable and sharing things that normal humans go through. We don't live in a fantasy land where like everyone's just perfect, you know? Yeah. So that's somebody that I continue to aspire to be, is like what motivates me to continue to address these challenges in my life is being that person for my 22-year-old self that needed it.
Yeah, I've always said that. Be the person you knew that you needed when you were younger. That's the type of person that you want to be for the people around you. Because
like how much of a better mentor can you be knowing that this is the market of people I serve, because I don't have to fake it.
Exactly.
I'm just going to share with you my experience. Totally. And that's why this podcast is designed around people that were like me and you, that went through this shit, that are still playing in this game, that are trying to navigate this world. It's not about here's what you should do. It's about here's my experience and here's where I struggled and here's how I overcame it. Maybe there's a better way. So that's really the platform we want to speak from, for sure.
I relate to that so much with my experience as a fitness coach, coming from my background. My target audience, I've served over 1,000 clients in my time, and it's always girls who I was her. Every single one of them, relate to them so much. And it allows you to be successful in your business if your clientele is someone that you know exactly how to help. You know what I mean? Like, you are your niche, you are your target audience, you're helping the person that you used to be. You know, I carry that same memento into other, you know, endeavors that I've gone into recently, but I do think that that's an interesting concept, because people, you know, when they're starting business, maybe this is a little off topic, but I find it interesting. Starting business, they're like, okay, I got to identify my target market, and then I got to market to those people. And then, you know, that can, you know, pose a challenge if you don't know how to speak to the person that's going to be, you know, working with you, unless you are that person. If you are speaking to someone that you used to be, that you are going back to help, you know, your client is someone that, you know, you were 5 years ago, whatever it might be, you're able to hit the nail on the head, and you're serving them, right? And it's someone that you feel fulfilled in serving. So I don't know how you feel about that.
No, I agree. That's why I don't work with billionaires, right? Like, what the fuck can I do for you? Like, in financial services, I mean, like, I've hired enough smart people around me that we can deal with the experience of people that make more revenue than us. Like, I would say most of our clients make more money than we do.
I don't even necessarily talk about a monetary amount.
Sure. I'm just in the world of financial services. Like, what we do is we help people with their money, right? Totally. So like, when I first started as like a traditional financial advisor 6 years ago or so, I had so much imposter syndrome, because you're selling the dream and living the nightmare. Right. Hey, here's how you become financially free while I'm broke. Right? It's so there's a dichotomy that you have to manage there, which is why I think paying for mentorship or like learning through somebody else's experience is so big, because you can condense the time that it takes to get to a certain level where you can still be in a coach and you could still be technically behind. But to your point, there's a massive level of authority because you only gain authority over something when you go through it.
Yeah.
You can't shortcut your way through that, right? And so there's a massive level of authority and credibility that you get when you've gone through it. And I think in business, that's going to serve a market, and like you don't even have to market that much. Like we've never run a single advertisement ever. Not one single advertisement ever.
It's incredible.
We intend to very soon, which I'm really excited about. But there's, just so many other ways that you can go about building a business, building your relationships. And a lot of that is just becoming someone that's just like gone through shit and sharing that and being there for others when they go through it. So couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Good way to tie a ribbon around that sort of segment of the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, I have so many things to be like, to the point of complaining and stuff. I could complain so much right now. Like, and don't get me wrong, I still get in the zone of it. Me and Landon, we love to talk about it all day, but we're pretty good with our relentless solution focus. But like, even from the standpoint, like, how funny is this? Like, I complain about my travel schedule because I'm probably traveling half the year. I'm on probably at least 100 flights a year. And that's something I prayed for 5 years ago. Like, how cool is it to be able to go to Asia for a month or go to Europe for a month or speak at all these events and get paid to go to these places, right? It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's fucking draining at the same time. But who am I to continue to complain about these things while I'm actively making decisions to go through with it, right? So this is something that I've been trying to manage a lot right now, is like, people are like, oh, dude, I see you've been traveling. I'm like, yeah, dude, it's exhausting. I'm ready for it to be over. But I'm never truly present in the moment of like, dude, this is fucking awesome. I get to fly first class and business class to all these different countries and do all these cool different things. And I'm complaining about it. Am I actually worthy of receiving it then if I'm just being an asshole about that?
That's interesting.
So that's definitely something that I'm excited to work through on this podcast with other people as well. Like people, because it's a normal thing for sure, but I have a lot more to be grateful for than not. Yeah. And I still find the small little things to complain about. So
it's interesting. I think we all struggle with that in various different ways. But one thing I found, lack of presence in my life was something I've struggled with a lot in the past as well, and now, of course. And God has helped me with that part, the presence factor of being able to just accept and feel and be in the moment, understanding that stress and anxiety is a tomorrow problem. That's something that tomorrow is worried for. And then, you can just be present in the moment. You don't have to worry about that. You can hand those stresses over to God. I don't know how you tend to kind of incorporate God in those moments, but I'd be curious to hear if you do, or if that's something that you are wanting, to do.
Yeah. It's something I've had to build in. It's so funny. Like if it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. Yeah. Right. So I'll even build X amount of time on my calendar to talk to God. Go for a walk.
Exactly, if that's what you need to do.
It's that at this point, it's how I've been able to do it until it becomes enough of a habit to go on autopilot.
Yeah.
But for me, that's probably been one of my biggest struggles, is rather living in the future or living in the past and not actually being alive. And just even when people would talk to me, I'm just somewhere else a lot of the time. Even sometimes on this podcast, there'll be people talking, I'm just like, damn, what am I going to get for lunch later? Totally. It's just crazy what goes on in my head. I think what I've come to find that keeps me the most present in my life is when I'm in flow. Flow to me is presence, right? Yeah. And what brings me flow? And you got to do a lot of things in your life to identify what brings you flow, right? Because if you're not doing enough things, you're not you don't have a large enough data pool.
You can't tap into it,
right?
Yeah.
So for me, I've come to find that I'm in the biggest level of flow when I'm doing two things. When I'm competing, like sports, business, when I'm in a level of competition, I can't help but be anywhere else. I'm right there. And when I'm right there, nothing else matters, and life is so beautiful because I'm just so
objective. It's simple.
When people can get the best of me, I know I help them move mountains. The other one is when I'm in a hammock. When I'm a hammock. pretty much anywhere. It's funny because like everywhere I go, you'll notice that there's a hammock typically. Like typically in my office, there's a hammock. Typically in my house, there's a hammock. I'm kind of getting settled into all these other spaces. So there's the hammock's I think in storage right now. But
so why a hammock?
I've just come to find that because I've been doing this enough, especially with my trips to El Salvador for these wellness retreats. They have hammocks there, and I've read it. Like I've been reading books in those hammocks, and I'm like, wow, this is. I don't care about anything else right now. And then now that I've brought God into those spaces with me, there's an overwhelming sense of peace and presence at the same time. Yeah. So it's
just associate a hammock with those feelings.
Yeah, yeah, because it's so much less about the thing. Right, so it's like maybe it won't always be a hammock. It's just maybe like it's that deep
chair
and a lot of where a lot of people go wrong is like they think it's the Ferrari that they want, but it's really about the feeling that you want to obtain by being in the Ferrari. So like for example, perfect example with the Ferrari, I was going to buy a Ferrari like recently, and I realized that I was like, I would feel so much better if I just bought a golf cart because I love golf carts. Like I love driving that around, like a cool, nice little tricked out one, especially when we have this podcast. We got people flying in. We're going to ride them around in the golf cart. That was bringing me so much more peace. If I put my dog on the golf cart, she's like, it's just such a cool little thing to have. Saves me a couple $100,000 and also brings me more happiness. Like that. I'm trying to think through that lens a lot more frequently now. So yeah, that presence has been a thing, but I'm no longer trying to like achieve presence because when you try to achieve presence, you're not present in the form of like you think it's a destination, right?
That doesn't make sense.
It's an oxymoron, right? It's like it literally is to
presence.
Yeah. So it's really about a level of what makes me presence and how can I feel and how can I rather do or not do. And right now in this season, it's about not doing for me.
It's what you can bring your attention around, you know, being able to pinpoint where your attention is at any given moment is a skill. Because I mean, everyone's distracted constantly, and being able to like find the source of your attention, as you were saying, like talking on the podcast, you're wondering about like where lunch is tomorrow. Being able to redirect that pin right to where you want it to be and keep it there is so hard. It is so hard right now, and like we're all distracted, phones, social media, etc., business, whatever it is. Its attention is lacking. So I think that's directly related to presence. Being present in the moment is, I don't know, severely lacking.
No, it's a great point because I think where I've always struggled was thinking that I had to work through that whatever I'm feeling in that moment. But the success in that realm is just actually pinpointing it and feeling it.
Yeah, like finding it. Like
just
where is it?
Be like, okay, cool, I'm here.
Right.
That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. It's not about working through it. It's not about getting over anything. It's about just being here and being attentive to it.
Right, but that's not interesting enough of a thought for people to stay.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
No, it's so well said. And my biggest distraction is achievement. The worst form of coping for me is achieving. Because it's disguised as success because I had a bad definition of success for so long. So whenever I'm feeling
working through that sentence right now.
So like whenever I'm feeling in some type of mood, I'll just like personally develop my way out of it or sell my way out of it, go make more money or like
develop my way out.
Those types of actions make you feel like you're being a productive human. But what I've probably needed in those moments were just like rest. Or just chill.
It's
and
so
it's
important.
So hard it's so hard to grasp until you go through it. I just pray that people don't have to get to that level of dissatisfaction to have to feel what I'm feeling right now.
I mean, disguising your ability to be happy in productivity is like the root of every entrepreneur's problem. Mm-hmm. Like that really is like such a hard thing to grapple with when you are unable to be not achieving at any current moment, where the second you stop with that pursuit, you feel guilty and you feel unappreciative of your free time, or you're not aware or present with the things that your success has given you.
Yep.
That's the race. You know what I mean? That's the hamster wheel.
Because it's like, oh, if I'm not reading or if I'm not taking sales calls, it's like, oh, I'm not getting better. Or we're not moving the needle. It's like, for what?
Yeah.
For what? Like, why am I doing all this shit if I can't actually be present in the moments that I actually am doing this for?
Right.
Such a fucked up world.
Yeah.
What I've come to find though, thankfully, is like as you start to get create more quote unquote business success and the business starts to get larger, the only way to get through it is leverage. You legit can't work your way through it. More hours is largely detrimental to it. So like hard work has a much more diminishing return over time. So there's a component where you're rather forced to grow through leverage or you die, or you can continue to burn out. And that's like, I was talking to Dylan about it. It's like, we're going to do this God's way. It's just about how long I want to continue to hang my head on the wall, like hit my head against the wall until I actually submit that we're going to do it God's way. Because God's going to get his way regardless
of what you decide.
It's really more about how much more I want to delay it and let things crash and burn before then, right?
How much longer do you want to suffer before you just listen to the path?
Jeff Bezos says it really well. It's like, business is just a game about how long can you prolong the death of your business, which is such a... Because every business is going to die, even Amazon.
Kind of a haunting thought a little.
Yeah, right? But it's a beautiful thought at the end of the day, too, if you can look at it that way, because Amazon's going to die eventually. Now, maybe Amazon's going to last another 100 years or so because it's such a big and awesome organization. But it's like, I can't work my way towards making it not die at a certain point, which is especially where I'm at, because like, I will die before the business dies. And then when I die, the business will die. So that's where human capital becomes a huge piece of it. Operational leverage, all these types of things are, the business brain is coming out for me right now. But that's where I'm in a season right now where it's a big focus for sure.
The more you can delegate, the more present you can be with the actual steps that you want to be taking every day that are actually moving the needle for you. Delegation is important for those types of things as well, for your own mental well-being, for your own ability to bring attention to the things that you actually care about, not waste time on things that are not, worth your time at a certain point in your business. That looks different. No matter where you are in your business and where you're starting, everything is worth your time when you're first starting. But
people make delegation sound so simple and easy. They make delegation sound so sexy until you realize I'm so busy right now that delegation's actually the harder thing, because now I got to go train that person. Someone. Now I got to go find, and then God forbid you delegate to somebody that's not good, you're losing a lot of time, energy, and money.
100%.
Not saying that delegating, because you have to delegate at some point. You have to, but where
you have to find that leverage point.
Yeah. Yep. And it typically comes with good people, and good people are not cheap. And I'm excited to put more food on more high performers' plates. That's really what we're in business for. I think business is such a cool opportunity to take this idea that's stuck in your brain as a founder and bring it to life. And then eventually when you get to a point where you delegate all the shit that you are no longer a subject matter expert or isn't your zone of genius. And now you're creating jobs. Totally. That's literally the whole point of business, in my opinion, is to create jobs. That's how the economy works. That's like, most people look at the stock market as the economy, but most of the jobs are through small businesses. So how do I create these ideas that are stuck in my head and that I'm so passionate about and actually create jobs around them without, while still making it work inside of margins? These are all different types of things that you have to think through, because it's not as sexy as people make. It's like, how does it build around my margins? Because if it's not, a lot of people are like, oh, profit doesn't matter. It's about people. Both matter a lot. Because if I'm,
they're important.
If I'm spending money on too many people, I don't have much profit to continue doing that. And now I'm going to die. And now those people are going to lose their jobs. Of course. So all those types of things. I don't know how we got to this point, but I don't want to let us stray too far in that direction right now. Because this is more about like, hey, here's my fucked up world right now. And let's talk about that.
It's not so fucked up.
Yep. It's just, I think it's these feelings that we feel are not new. They've been going around for thousands of years. Like, I'm sure the ancient Egyptians felt these same feelings, but like part of that was because like they were scared they were going to die from a saber-toothed tiger or something. Yeah, like the situations might be different, but the feelings are all the same. So it's nothing novel, but it's around like, how do I navigate this new world that we live in? Because it's tough. These devices are really fucking me up, for sure.
And how can you navigate the same emotions in different situations? Because they feel like different emotions every new situation that you encounter. The more success you continue to achieve, the more times the stress, the overwhelm, the sadness, the depression, all of those negative emotions will show up over and over again, but in a different context.
Sure.
And how long does it take for you to recognize that that's a recurring emotion for you? And how do you learn how to manage and cope with that in the same way, in the healthy manner, over and over again, instead of dealing with every situation as though it's a novel emotion? I feel like that's challenging, super challenging. At least I've experienced that as well. Stress shows up for me a lot. I'm a very stressed out person, anxious person.
I'm going to pause you, and you're not a very stressed out. You experience it.
I experience
We don't
it
use that
often.
I am thing for negative stuff.
No, don't
Sorry,
find
go ahead.
identity in stress. But yes, I experience it a lot, to reword that. And learning how to, stress management, right? Learn how to stress, how to cope with that emotion, even though every different situation that I notice it in feels different. Does that make sense?
Sure.
But noticing a repeat of that emotion, repeat of that pattern, I'm falling into this again, which I do a lot. Learning how to navigate repeating emotions is probably a healthier way to look at emotions, because there's only a certain range that we can experience.
Sure.
And understanding different coping patterns that we may need to go through no matter what path that we're on.
And what's so funny is that half of it's fake. Like half of the shit that we're putting into our heads is fake. It doesn't actually exist, right?
We're
These are
just
situations
manifesting it.
like we're thinking about things that haven't even happened
Correct,
yet.
yeah.
And so like, how crazy is it if we believe that half of the shit that we're experiencing is fake? We're legitimately living a miserable life based off things that have not happened yet.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because we don't want to change. So we're going to continue down that perpetual mechanism of doing that so that it keeps us comfortable and allows us not to change. It is so fucked up. It's like all of these scenarios I put in my head are legitimately not real.
Yeah.
It's 99% of the time much worse than I play it out to be.
I'm pretty sure that is I think something I've read, 99% of the things that we worry about never happen, never actually happen. Isn't that so crazy?
We're prepping ourselves to live a miserable life that doesn't actually
Literally.
exist, and then it manifests into the reality. So,
Insane.
oh well, let's wrap it up there. That's something to marinate on for sure. But thank you for being here. Thank you for doing your best to get the best out of me, and let's keep it rolling.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Start and cut.